Hey, what's up, guys? It's Scarra here from theScore eSports here with Dylan, the Immortals coach, after a 2-1 victory against Liquid. Probably one of the harder matches they've had during the split. How are you feeling after the game? Are you excited? Are you a little exasperated? Like relieved?
Well, every time we have played Team Liquid on stage thus far, we've respected them as a pretty good team because in scrims they've generally done pretty well against us and against other teams in the LCS good as well. But for some reason, for the rest of the year, every time we've played them on stage, we just kind of won in 25 minutes. Um, but it was again like this time we're like, okay, this is the time maybe they show up and play like as good as they are. So they played pretty well. I think we played a bit better and we ended up winning the series.
Does that mean you think TL is deserves their current record? Do you think they're the third best or fourth best team in North America right now?
I think between TL and C9, I would put between third and fourth place right now. Yeah.
What do you think really elevates TL to this kind of position? Do you think it was the new AD carry change? Do you think their players are playing better? What do you think really gelled together for them to be this threatening?
Well, I think with any roster change, a lot of the times it kind of motivates players and kind of brings a breath of fresh air for them. I'm not sure. I'm not obviously with TL. In addition to that, I just think Dardock's an exceptional player and he's been playing really well.
Uh, let's talk a little bit about the games today. You went over 3 games. So far, did you expect them to ban Soraka Rumble every game and show like pretty high priority on Braum?
Well, Rumble has been banned in almost all of our games, and I think we've only played it on stage twice thus far. Teams were perma-banning Rumble even before we played it on stage, so obviously we expect that. And Adrian had two extremely good performances yesterday on Soraka, so I think both of the bans are pretty obvious. Yeah.
And what about the Braum priority? Was that something that you expected as well?
Well, C9 first picked Braum in our set against them last week, and it's something that teams have been doing lately. Braum's been a pretty highly contested pick, so I don't think we thought it would be like a first pick, but we definitely knew it would be contested in the series.
So Rainover is really well known for his Rek'Sai. What do you think about teams consistently giving him that champion?
I think Rek'Sai is just a great overall, all around pick. I think at this point, I don't think it's a huge power pick. It's not super broken. It's not super OP. It just allows Rainover to do everything. It's really well rounded. So I think it suits us well. We've obviously had really good results on the pick, but I think teams give it to us just because they're looking more at the strength of the champion as opposed to what we do with it.
So how do you feel in the situation where your team's down and they lost the game, and so you're going to a third game? Is suddenly the draft is a lot more important, or do you feel that the draft is a lot more important, or do you just take it every draft as it is?
I think you just have to look at what happened in the first game and the second game and identify what are the actual ways in which the team is winning the game. I think it's easy to look at a champion pick and see that pick go 5-0, 10-0, etc., and be like, oh, well, this pick is OP because it went 10-0, so we should ban it next game. But I think it's more important to see how these plays are actually being made, which lanes are getting the priority to make the plays. Can this jungler freely contest vision because we had a bad jungle matchup? Things like that. So that's what we generally try and look at between series.
Well, Rainover in the post game interview said that your second game draft kind of wasn't that good. Could you clarify what that meant?
So a lot of teams are picking Zillion into Victor right now as a pretty good counter matchup. I think if we're going to be playing something like Zillion into Victor, it helps if we have a lot more setup, like we had in game one with the Bard, to actually set up picks on the Victor in the mid lane. In addition to that, I think just our priority on the side lanes was probably a bit off. Yeah.
Fair enough. How is it being the coach and drafter for a player like Huni, a player who literally has one of the most diverse champ pools of any LCS region?
Well, I think last year, last split, when we first started playing as a team, we practiced something like 16 top laners before our first match. Huni can actually play nearly any champion in the game. He's a very, very versatile player. And it's really good to have a player that just has a lot of pocket picks, counter matchups. We hadn't practiced a ton of Gangplank into Shen for today, but it was the perfect scenario for it. We had Bard Zillion, it was Gangplank into Shen, it was winning lane matchup and a winning team comp. And obviously Gangplank can match the Shen ulti. So being able to pick up something like that with a very little amount of practice on Gangplank just makes our draft so much more versatile.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a very specific question. So last split, you got coach of the split, and there's a lot of controversy. People are like, "No, Tony deserved coach of the split. He won playoffs, and even before the win, people are saying that he deserved it better because he was able to do more with an underdeveloped roster." Do you think there's any merit in that kind of remark?
Honestly, I don't think the general public, nor me, nor you, really has a good idea of how these coaching staffs are operating behind the scenes. So the way coaching staff is awarded to a specific person, like it's really up to the community's best guess as to how these teams are functioning. I think as far as last split is concerned, I think like our approach in the regular season, our strategy, our drafts were quite good. And I think our entire coaching staff, me, Robert Yip, Dodo, did a really good job. Um, and I think this year they're just trying to clarify the word a bit more for exactly specifically what it means. And it's more going to be a team performance versus roster thing, I think, and drafting from what I've seen.
Fair enough. As a coach, how do you kind of define your style? So a lot of coaches are really good at specific things. Usually, there's a common perception that a coach is good at everything, which is just not true. Some coaches really specialize more toward maybe communication benefit, more macro-oriented play, more micro-oriented play. Maybe they're great at rotations. How do you really define your style?
So when I first came to the team, a lot of what I did was setting up really good communication and macro systems for how we're playing the game. Like if this wave is pushing in here, this is exactly what needs to happen. This person needs to communicate to this person, figure it out, and then we make the correct decision. And I think during like the first month or two, I set up a lot of really good systems in the team that we still use today. So I think that's probably was the biggest thing. But I think as of right now, we've been together as a team for so long. Me and the coaching staff just works to make our practice environment as productive as possible, making sure we're always focusing on targeted improvement areas and that our lifestyle, our schedule, and our practice regimen is really consistent.
Lastly, I talked to Adrian in an interview the other day, and he says that before in the draft, they didn't really respect the enemy team. A lot of times, you ended up drafting like I would say poorly comparatively to the other team, but just ended up winning. What exactly was that transition like for you, who could tend to control the draft a lot more than let's say the players?
I think last split, because both in scrims and on stage, we were really adept at pressing advantages early. It made a lot of sense at the time to draft a lot of compositions that could roam a lot from mid lane and that had really strong like side lane matchups basically. So you can always be pressing side lanes, you can always be diving, you can always be pressuring the map. And when you have a split worth of barely losing any scrims and 17-1 in the split, and it's working consistently, um, it just seemed like a good idea at the time. Obviously, in retrospect, it didn't work out as well with the meta shift in the playoffs, but it worked extremely well for a very long time. So whereas maybe that wasn't what every other team in the world was doing, we had a large amount of evidence to think that was a good idea. This split, for example, we're putting a lot more focus on playing the game in a controlled and repeatable fashion. And I think in a lot of our games this split have been really controlled and really clean. Maybe this week not so much, but that's what we're focusing on now.
So you say that maybe this week not so much. So the last two games, both the games this split or this week were kind of sloppy. You know, yesterday your players said that they were relatively tired, so it's hard for them to focus throughout the games. What do you do as a coach to make sure that doesn't happen again?
So we practiced all week with a different practice schedule because we had to play the late game. And as you saw last week, like you can be playing as late as 10, 11 p.m. at night. So I think that was just probably a lot of the tiredness, of course, is a scheduling thing, right? Um, and I think it's just important that the players have adequate rest and that when we reset for practice the next week, we're coming in with a clear and good plan.
Uh, so I talked to Huni yesterday. I asked him question, and his response was really interesting. I asked him what was the most unexpected result of this split from any team, and he told me Immortals losing one game. What do you think about that comment?
Um, I think we're definitely a favorite to be like a top two, if not the best team right now in the NA LCS. And our players are extremely confident. I'll say that. So that's not surprising that Huni said that. To me, dropping one game, especially in the best of three format where we can afford to experiment a lot more, is not as big of a surprise.
Well, thank you very much. Do you have any last words for your fans out there?
Just thanks to all the Immortals fans to support us, and hopefully we can end the split strong.
You're one of the best coaches in North America. It's Scarra here from theScore eSports. You can find more content online on our mobile app. Thank you guys. Hope you guys have a nice day.